Welcome back. This is the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato, and today we've got a special guest joining us. It's Sean Green of the Die Hard Eagles podcast, and what's the other one? Always Gambling, correct?
Sports Gambling Podcast.
Sports Gambling Podcast. Sean, sorry about that, but thank you so much for joining us today. You're here to preview the Eagles-Giants game with us. You must be happy because it's been a hell of a season for your boys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, dominating 11-1. Everyone thought I was crazy when I gave out Eagles to be the number one seed in the NFC at 50-1. Knock on wood that thing comes in. But, yeah, it's been a great season. Jalen Hurts having an MVP-like season. A.J. Brown, I went nuts when they traded for him. I thought he was exactly the type of guy they needed to unlock this offense. And, yeah, he showed it on Sunday, and he's been showing it all season.
And I kind of want to start right there with Jalen Hurts because the progression of Jalen Hurts is somewhat similar to what we've seen from a quarterback like Josh Allen, who might have struggled a little bit with accuracy. And now it seems like his field vision and the touch that he has on passes over the middle of the field and really anywhere on the football field has drastically improved this season. Do you think that's just a product of the additions of A.J. Brown, second year with Devonta Smith, or do you think it's just the work that Jalen Hurts has put in during the offseason and just his true development?
Yeah, I mean, everyone thought I was crazy when I said I think Jalen Hurts can make a jump here in his second year as a starter. He started a couple games his rookie year, but that was like a completely different system. Carson Wentz had poisoned the building, and then Jalen Hurts comes in. He has his first year as a legit starter last year. I saw some flashes where I'm like, this kid can throw. He just needs to develop, and he put in a ton of time in the offseason. And you've seen it every level where he's been at, whether it's from high school to college, from Alabama to Oklahoma to his rookie year to second year. He's gotten better as a passer. So to me, it was easy to project that he's going to get better. And then you throw in A.J. Brown, a guy he has a relationship with, a friendship with. A guy has a massive catch radius. Like, I think I could complete 45% to A.J. Brown because the guy catches everything, and he's a giant dude. Like, even some low balls that are bad throws by Jalen Hurts, when you have A.J. Brown with that long frame scooping him up, and Devonta Smith as well. And then you throw in, like, second year in the offense, Nick Sirianni knowing what to call for him. It's just everything kind of coming together. But really, the dude puts in a ton of work, so he deserves the credit.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about Jalen Hurts before we turn the subject there. What are some of the areas of his game that you think can still improve this year? Or do you feel like he's kind of reached a level where he's really just operating at high cylinder with everything he's done? Is there anything a defense, for example, has tried to take away that he's then struggled with to adjust to, or any kind of throws, any kind of areas of the field that he struggled throwing the ball to?
Yeah, I mean, I would say against the blitz, the Eagles offense hasn't been as good as it has been not against the blitz. I think there's some stuff he can do there. A couple games ago, it wasn't even like a funk because they were still winning games, but they weren't playing as well. He was kind of forcing the QB scramble a little bit. He was maybe running when he didn't need to run. Kind of slipping into some bad habits, but he's cleaned up the game a lot since then. So, yeah, I would just say, only running when you need to run. And that's something I think that's always going to be an issue because he is a good runner. You just kind of got to pick your spots and then not taking huge shots when you do run. He's pretty good at it, but I still think he can improve.
It's funny, too, because I think the most dangerous part of Jalen Hurts' game, even though he has improved so much as a passer, is his ability to extend plays and what he does with his legs, which coincides very well to what the Eagles want to do philosophically. You guys love to run the football, run off the zone read, and that offensive line you guys have allow you to have such a diverse rushing attack. I remember studying the Eagles film last year, Nick Sirianni's first year as the head coach, and I just felt like you guys used the trap game very well, counter, any kind of power pullers, and that's something that specifically exploits the New York Giants defense because their second level is pretty weak. Can you speak to the overall rushing attack before we get into the passing attack of the Philadelphia Eagles, Miles Sanders, the running backs, and how Jalen Hurts really enhances it?
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing those zone read options and you have to, play the option that the quarterback could run, it really makes things difficult. If you're a defensive end, like Micah Parsons, they really neutralized Micah Parsons in that Cowboys game by instead of running away from him and letting him be like this, great guy coming from the other side and tracking the play down. They ran right at him and forced him to make a bunch of tough reads. And if you're not used to that, it really is, it's really tough. Like, do you play the running back or do you play Jalen Hurts, or do you play the pass? Because they pass off of it as well, and it makes it really tough. Like, you have to have really, really good linebackers to counterbalance it. And quietly, Miles Sanders is having a career year. It's a contract year for Miles Sanders. At the beginning of the season, it didn't seem like he was going to be an Eagle next year, but he's had a ton of touchdown regressions. He's running really hard, and the offensive line makes everyone look good. So it's kind of a combination of all three there. But when your quarterback can run so well, it really makes it hard for a linebacker.
And the Eagles right now, I think, are third in the NFL in RPO rate. You guys run a lot of RPOs, and you guys feel like pass a lot off those RPOs. So I'm just imagining that defensive coordinators are in such a stressful mode to defend this RPO game because of Jalen Hurts. Like you said, those three options that he has off of it. Do you know of any of the primary RPO type of concepts that are ran whenever the Eagles do decide to employ that? Is it a lot of vertical? Is it a lot of glance just over the middle of the field? Are you guys a bubble type of team? Do you know exactly what they do off that RPO game?
Yeah, they'll run some of the bubble stuff, but that I think they run that less off the RPO. It'll be some short stuff off the RPO. I can't imagine. I'm trying to think. I don't think they run a ton of the deep stuff off the RPO, but to kind of highlight Jalen's progression last year when they were running a ton of RPO and he was running the ball well, there was a way to beat him where he would just load the box and force him to find his second read and force him to throw the ball downfield. And there were moments where he struggled. I mean, you look at that Tampa Bay game, he was dealing with an ankle injury, and I'm sure that didn't help, but they played him a certain way. They dared the Eagles to beat him with the pass, and he just couldn't do it. The difference this year is he's beating them with the pass. You saw the game against the Packers. They set almost a franchise record for rushing yards, and he was a big part of it. Ran for 157 yards. He just ran all over the Packers. And then people go, oh, you can't win that way. In the NFL, you got to win by throwing the ball. All right, give us the Tennessee Titans. Going to throw all over your ass and have A.J. Brown dominate. So they're showing they can win in multiple different ways, which I think is really highlights, how well they're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because last year the Giants were actually one of the teams that were able to slow down Jalen Hurts in their first game before kind of the team went into collapse mode under Judge. It was a 13-7 game. They had one play that stands out to me where Xavier McKinney was in the middle of field close as a safety read Jalen Hurts and intercepted him at around midfield. McKinney's not going to play in this game. They don't really have anyone else on this roster who can make that kind of play in my mind. I also think part of the issue for Hurts last year that's kind of changed is he has more confidence to try to stick those tight window throws and to try to throw the ball into a spot that can be a 50-50 play. Now that he has the receivers. I wanted to ask you specifically, though, because now we're trying to turn it forward. It's not the same Giants defense or same Eagles offense with A.J. Brown. What did the Colts do specifically? Because they were the only team I've watched this year that really actually slowed down the Eagles offense. And I remember Ben Solak was talking about it. Is there anything that stood out to you that they did that maybe Giants fans can look at and be like, all right, maybe that's something Wink Martindale, Giants defensive coordinator, can look to do to slow down this offense? Because that's the biggest, for me, it's like Giants offense, maybe they can get stuff going. I don't know. But defensively is where my main concern is right now.
Yeah, I mean, and you want to talk about some of the funk that the Eagles were in. Again, they still won the game. As an Eagles fan, it almost felt like a loss, but they've been susceptible to fumbles. Like they had awesome turnover efficiency those first games, and then a big A.J. Brown fumble. There was a big Quez Watkins fumble in the Commanders game there. So I think going after A.J. Brown, who's had a couple of fumbles, getting some receiver fumbles, that's how you turn a game. Jalen Hurts himself is pretty solid about not turning it over, but there's been some issues with the receivers in particular. So if you can get some strips there, that's obviously a game changer. I do think the way they rushed, or the way the Colts rushed them, was a smart way. Like they didn't bring a ton of outside rush because that's easy for Jalen to just rush up the middle. It's kind of that kind of that muddle rush or whatever it is where they rush, but they don't go too crazy up the field. And that's really where, but the Packers got exposed doing that, where they just rushed him like a regular quarterback. And it's like, guys, if you're going to give us that, he's going to take it all day. It's that fine art of like rushing, but not going too hard on the edge, sitting back a little bit. But then, to his credit, he's been good at reading his progressions and finding the open guys. I think he struggled a little bit with that. But then also, like, they did move the ball decently on the Colts. Those inopportune penalties. He also had a strip sack. That was his only. Hurts has only had 3 turnovers, I think, this year, and one came against the Colts. So that was really what killed the offense. Honestly, like if they didn't have those turnovers, I think they would have won by more of a margin.
Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau, they're going to have the work cut out for them because you're right. Both of those pass rushers love to stress high side. They're going to have to play contain. And it's something that the Giants are somewhat familiar with. Back in week 3, they played Chicago, and I felt like Wink Martindale did an excellent job sending kind of cross dog blitzes through the A gap off the ass of Dexter Lawrence, and then actually using Dexter Lawrence kind of as a contained defender, flowing from like a 1 technique all the way to like a 5 spot post snap, along with the end man on the line of scrimmage dropping off to be that primary contain. I think the Giants might look to try and flush Jalen Hurts in those situations out to the edge where those contained defenders will be. That's at least what Wink Martindale put on tape when they were playing Justin Fields. But this is such a different animal trying to guard this Philadelphia Eagles offense. And before we go to the
no
defense,
Mustapher.
no Mustapher, who really struggled against Dexter Lawrence. I want to get your opinion somewhat on this offensive line. Look, Jason Kelce is one of the best offensive linemen, one of the best centers in the National Football League, but he's more of an athletic type of guy. Not that he can't hold his own against power, but I remember just over the years, he used to struggle with Dalvin Tomlinson when Dalvin Tomlinson was here. Right now, the Giants have Dexter Lawrence playing at an unreal level. They love to run odd front in their base personnel packages, 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. How has Jason Kelce held up in those types of situations, odd front, pure strength against 340-pound athletes like Dexter Lawrence this season?
Well, I mean, one, I think Jason Kelce, besides his athleticism, he's incredibly smart.
Yeah.
He's great, high IQ center, which is what you need to stay in the league this long. And they've been great about, figuring out. He's got 2 guards right next to him that are great at supporting him. He hasn't really gotten destroyed by power, I would say, or like by giant guys. I would say his issues, honestly, there have been a couple snap issues from Jason Kelce. So maybe that's him getting in his own head or whatever. I think that's been his real weakness so far this season. If there has been issues as far as pressure, there's been a couple moments where Jordan Mailata has had some issues. He's a big guy, but there are some guys, and Kayvon Thibodeau, he's probably going to be matched up on him. I'm trying to think which edge he's going to be coming at, but he might have some shots to beat him with some speed or some spin moves, that kind of stuff. There's been a couple moments where Jordan Mailata has gotten beat, quite honestly. Lane Johnson having a great year, as you would expect, but I think Jason Kelce's pretty good at working with the 2 guards next to him, in particular Landon Dickerson, who the Eagles drafted. And I was on the fence about the pick, honestly, because he had his injury history in Alabama. I'm like, this dude can't stay healthy. But knock on wood, he has for the vast majority of his early career here. So I think he's going to rely on some help from the guards there, do what they can, and, kind of use his intelligence to figure out the best way. So I think Kelce will be okay, but I would highlight he has had a couple issues with the snap.
I know it might be somewhat difficult, but I know the Giants are going to try to scheme some sort of free rushers, and they're going to try to take advantage of the fact that Dexter Lawrence has such a size advantage on someone like Jason Kelce, who is excellent as a undersized center. One more question on the offense. I don't know if Dan has another one. One more question from me. How many touchdowns will Boston Scott score this week?
Oh, man. So obviously you guys, it's on your radar, but yeah, I mean, who knows? Like it's kind of been Kenny Gainwell, but again, Boston Scott, the history, when it's like 6 games, he has 8 touchdowns against the Giants. As a gambling man, I'm definitely playing Boston Scott 1 touchdown, Boston Scott 2 touchdowns, Boston Scott to score 3 touchdowns, which again is a crazy scenario, even as an Eagles fan. That's 250 to 1. He's had multi-touchdown games. I don't know what it is about the Giants not being able to tackle this guy, and he was used more in other years where they weren't as some of it was like filling in for injury and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know, like he hasn't had a crazy year, but for whatever reason, this is a matchup he loves. So I'm definitely betting some Boston Scott touchdowns coming this Sunday.
For Giants fans who aren't as aware of what the Eagles have been or why the Eagles have been able to be this dominant team, maybe see if you can name a player or two players who are kind of been surprise massive contributors, role players. We go by the film every week and we talk about like the high effort players, the unheralded players, maybe a player like that Giants fans need to and their jersey number. So while we're watching the game this Sunday, we're like, all right, let's keep an eye on that player and know where he is on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I would say TJ Edwards, 57.
Oh, yes, you would. Guess where he's from? Wisconsin, baby.
Yeah.
I don't have my Wisconsin gear back here. All we do is produce linebackers at the NFL level. Let me just make that clear. Where did he get Edwards was a free agent, right? Rookie free agent?
Yeah, or if they did, he drafted him late round. He's a guy that's just he's been flying around. He's been having a great year. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I can't remember honestly, like a time where the Eagles linebackers were this strong. You would have to go back to like, the Jim Johnson defense days. It was always kind of a position where, Howie and his analytics, it's like, you don't spend a lot of draft capital. You don't spend a lot of dollars on the linebacker position, but they kind of fell into it this year with TJ Edwards having a career year, Kaiser White, who's a little banged up, but Nakobe Dean filled in for him and looked really good. Again, the game was a little bit out of hand by the time he got in there, but he ended up leading the team in tackles and looked really clean. I think another guy you got to watch is the rookie Jordan Davis, number 90. You don't need his jersey number. You're not going to miss him. Massive dude there in the middle. And, the Eagles, their defensive weakness has been probably stopping the run, right? Like, so with him out, that made it even harder. But they signed Linval Joseph. They signed in Ndamukong Suh. So they have a pretty deep rotation of dudes that are just 300 pounds. Jordan Davis is a fun watch, and he is a really tough guy to block, number 90, the nose tackle. And you talk about some odd fronts. When the Eagles are struggling with the run, they will run like a bear front, put 5 guys, put the nose tackle right on the center there, and use that to slow them down. And then I wouldn't be surprised if you guys see a lot of that, because they're going to be looking to stop Saquon. And I think they're going to feel pretty comfortable with Bradbury and Darius Slay on the Giants, whoever's left receiver wise that you got. So I think you're going to see a decent amount of Jordan Davis.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we're afraid of, right, Dan? We know what the Giants are going to do offensively. They're probably going to roll out more 12 and 13 personnel than maybe the Eagles have seen recently. And how do you combat that? You come out in that bear front. You come out in that odd front. And you just load the line of scrimmage. And I'm not really 100% certain how the Giants are going to be able to get any kind of offense against that defensive front if the Giants offensive line doesn't block. So maybe, Dan, I want to get your opinion on this. Dan, we'll bring you here. Do you think the Giants will try at least to use the quick game like we've been talking about all week, and maybe a little bit more 11 personnel? I know the Giants kind of suck in terms of their receiver depth, but that might be one way to try and at least generate something on the ground, because 12, 13 personnel has not been working recently.
I think they absolutely have to for a number of reasons, but partially for what Sean was just bringing up. Look, Nakobe Dean is a player who now Giants fans probably wish they took over a Cordell Flott type, right? I mean, was that pick before Flott? It might have been, but a few picks before Flott, but he'd be
I believe the Giants took Azudu and Flott over Nakobe Dean.
And Azudu, whatever, but I mean, he'd be a much bigger contributor right now. They could desperately need him, and same goes for TJ Edwards, who would be by far and away the best linebacker on the Giants right now, by far and away. But both of those guys are not known for their pass coverage. One thing, when I watched the film of Nakobe Dean, I had a lot of questions about how he would be in pass coverage at the NFL level. TJ Edwards, certainly not a pass coverage type linebacker. I'm sure you could tell me if he's been okay in that regard. But if you go to the quick game, if you go to the shotgun, if you use lighter personnel and you're Mike Kafka, you have a chance to put both of those linebackers or Zamir, or whoever they put on the field, in conflict. Same thing you did last week in overtime. Slant flat, curl flat combination, half field reads, whatever it may be. Put the linebacker in conflict, make him cover one-on-one. Use, like Washington football team did with Scott Turner, use ways to get Saquon Barkley one-on-one against one of those linebackers. So yes, Nick, I would hope that this is the game where they do, because I think you're right, man. If they try to line up their classic 12 and 13 personnel against the Eagles, now that Jordan Davis is back, now that they've added guys up front like Suh and Linval Joseph, it's just not going to work, and it's going to be ugly, and it's going to be lead to a lot of what we saw last week, 3 and out. So I
Yeah,
hope they do it.
and to your point, I would imagine Giants going to look to attack the middle of the field as well. I think Cody Bellinger probably would have a decent chance catching a couple balls here. His receiving prop is 2.5.
Daniel Bellinger, but no, I make the
Oh,
same
sorry,
mistake.
what
I
did I
made
say?
the same
Sorry.
mistake. Don't worry about it.
The hot stove talk kind of worked into
Yeah,
my brain
exactly.
there. Daniel Bellinger, yeah. So they've struggled with the tight ends at times, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who had been getting a ton of interceptions for the Eagles, not amazing in coverage. He's out. We got Reed Blankenship, who's kind of like your Vince Papale type, late round pick. I don't even know if he was drafted, honestly. And
He wasn't. No.
no, he was undrafted, right? Yeah, so
Yeah,
he
wasn't. Yeah.
he's kind of living the dream there in the safety backfield there. So I would try and find Reed Blankenship and force him to cover if I was the Giants offensive coordinator. And because I think that's and even the other safety Epps hasn't been playing great. Like the strengths have been the outside corners and the pass rush. So I think there's some opportunities in the middle of the field, especially if you get to the safeties there.
And I wanted to ask you to, or at least get your opinion on something with, I think the Giants should try to get aggressive early in this game by throwing deep to back up James Bradberry and Darius Slay, to have them respect his speed. Because if they align and press, it might be a little bit more difficult for Darius Slay to win off the line of scrimmage, to run those quick game type of concepts that we hope they implement. So has Jonathan Gannon run a lot of press type of alignments? What is exactly the coverages that the Eagles have employed against speedy receivers or against teams that are a little bit more run heavy?
Yeah, it is it's weird. I mean, like the Eagles have had historic numbers in a lot of ways this year with their defense. Some of that is relying on the turnovers. They've been great at creating turnovers. And again, I'm optimistic we can get some this week. But what's been frustrating is Eagles fans and like screw Jonathan Gannon, what are we doing? There have been times where they've been sitting back in soft zones and giving receivers, in particular fast receivers, way too big of a cushion. Darius Slay is a very good receiver. Is he as fast as he was earlier on in his career? Maybe not. So I think there has been some moments where they kind of play it safe. They sit back a little bit. They wait for the opponent to make a mistake and pounce on them with either a sack or a turnover. So I think and as an Eagles fan, it is frustrating at times when they sit back in these soft zones. So I think that could be an issue.
So I just looked up the statistics. 54% of the time, the Eagles are in middle of the field close. So that might be a way. It's either cover one or it's cover three. There might be a way where the Giants can isolate a one-on-one matchup. And then it's just going to come down to, can Darius Slayton win vertically against Darius Slay and James Bradberry? Now, Giant fans, we know James Bradberry very well. I think James Bradberry is one of the better cornerbacks in the National Football League. But while he was even here and playing at a Pro Bowl level, one thing he did struggle with was speed. So I'm actually a little curious if the Giants are going to attempt to challenge James Bradberry in those one-on-one matchups. I don't know if Darius Slay would win that consistently or win that in a one-off type of situation, but I'm excited to see how. And another big coverage you guys use is quarters, which is just a coverage that is going on everywhere. I think Jonathan Gannon is somewhat known for those quarters type of coverages. Yeah. If the Giants catch them in quarters, maybe they can work that quick game, Dan, and that's a way that the Giants can slowly get the football down the football field.
Yeah, you nailed it. And they have to, because I think they're going to have a much better chance throwing the ball in the quick game when the Eagles are running quarters than running the ball at this stage with heavy personnel. It's just, it ain't working for the Giants right now. Josh Azudu isn't coming back. Their left guard, who they could use in the run game, whatever they've got going. And I feel like this run defense for the Eagles has looked a lot better. It had that, like you mentioned earlier, Sean, they had that period where everyone's like, oh my God, this is going to be the big liability for the team. And now, especially with Jordan Davis back, I don't know if that's the case at all.
And let me ask you too. Oh, sorry, Sean.
No, I was just going to say held Derrick Henry 11 carries, 30 yards.
Exactly.
So, I mean, and part of it is there does seem to be a home road issue there with the run defense as well. I've noticed they played much better at home. Jersey, it's not that crazy of a road trip. I don't know what to look into it. Some of that was with and without Jordan Davis as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a big factor. How has James Bradberry looked for you guys this season?
Great. I mean, again, like that. the cornerback play has been really good. Like the thing that's been frustrating at times is just them playing off and playing soft, like talking about that quarters coverage. But a lot of that I think is more schematically. I can't recall like a ton of times where I've been like, oh, Bradbury got beat deep. I was listening to a beat reporter and they were having a conversation of like, who is the defensive MVP of this season? He made a pretty good case there for Bradbury. So I think Bradbury combined with like the fact that you have Darius Slay on the other side, they're playing pretty well together. And to me, I think they're an underrated tandem in the league. I don't hear their name getting thrown out a lot when you talk about like the best cornerbacks in the league, but especially I think they have like kind of like different skill set as well, which creates some good opportunities as far as like matching up with receivers.
I hope Avonte Maddox doesn't play in this game because I feel like if there's one way the Giants can successfully pass the football, it would be against Josiah Scott in the nickel position because Maddox is a pretty good nickel back that you guys have. Has Scott kind of struggled the last few games in Maddox's absence since he's been on IR?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, kind of going back to the middle of the field, I couldn't tell you if it's like, hey, should the safety be here or is this the nickel corners issue? Whatever it is, it just hasn't been as good without Avonte Maddox and without Chauncey Gardner, with those guys being out. Yeah. So I couldn't tell you if it's the nickel corner more, if it's the safety. I know Avonte Maddox, he is able to return from IR, but they're doing that thing where they haven't activated him yet. They will they? I don't know, but he's obviously a huge addition if he's a go.
And Sean, before we get out, thank you so much for your knowledge on the Philadelphia Eagles team. I know you're a gambling guy, so you want to give us some of the best bets specifically for, week 14 and for the Giants-Eagles game.
Yeah. So for the Giants-Eagles game, I will the Boston Scott touchdown stuff is so fun. I mean, him to score one touchdown, if you want to play it safe, is plus 550. I think if you also want to juice it up a little bit, Boston Scott plus Daniel Bellinger, each of those guys to score a touchdown, parlaying those together. That's a real juicy payout. Obviously, I like the Eagles laying the 7 there. Don't lay the 7.5. Lay the 7. We're gonna mess you guys up. But as far as other bets I like this weekend, I do like Miami laying 3 on the road. It's the road, but it's this Chargers defense is completely cooked. Tua, Waddle, Tyreek, they're going to have a massive game. And I also like the Jets catching 10 points against the Bills. Jets are dealing with the flu issue, so kind of I wouldn't bet that until day of in case some of those guys are out that are like key guys. But double-digit dogs in division, always a good bet historically. And I like this Jets defense. Like Josh Allen is good this season, but he's not that MVP quality. And, Mike White is such an upgrade over Zach Wilson. I just think this game's going to be a good game. And 10 points with this Jets team, the way their defense is playing, and Buffalo's not consistently getting 30 points. So if you give this Jets team 10 points, that feels way too much.
All right. Sean, thank you so much for joining us. One final thing before we let you go. Give us a score prediction on the game, and then tell everyone where they can find you on Twitter.
Yep. I got the Eagles winning 31-17. You can follow me on Twitter at Sean T. Green. Check out the Sports Gambling Podcast and the Die Hard Eagles Podcast. And, of course, go Birds!
All right. Thanks for joining us, Sean. Have a great rest of your weekend, my man.
Dan, did you see that ticker thing up in the corner that he had?
That was a pretty cool thing. At some point, I'm going to upgrade my studio. I have something really cool that a friend actually just gave me, like a big time Giants memorabilia thing. Not huge time, I shouldn't say. I just kind of framed that weird, but something I found insanely cool from one of their greatest years. So I'll bring that. I'll put it up. I'm going to leave it as a surprise. I'll put it up at some point in the background.
I was a little jealous of his setup. He had a nice
cool
setup. And you know what? And I hate to admit this, the hat that he had, I kind of like that hat. Like, I'm not a big green guy, but it has the bird on it, and I don't know. Since the Giants, we're not a team that uses an animal.
Nick, you don't like any Eagles hats, all right, Nick? Don't you? This is not. We don't need to like Eagles hats.
I'm just telling what I see, man. I would rather wear that than the stupid of the eagle, just that's the eagle's face. Like I
Now
think
you're
that
getting
one is
better. Now you're
better.
talking about
A
stupid
little
Eagles. I like
classical.
that. Yeah.
I mean,
Because
you
there
have
was a lot
Eagles
of
green on
disrespect.
right now, my guy. You have Eagles green on. Oh, there was disrespect there. There definitely was.
There was something he was like, "We're gonna kill you guys. It's an easiest matchup of the year." I don't know about that. I mean, Vegas had this at 6.5 to start. I think it has moved to 7, so that means the money is coming in on the Eagles. But the Giants. And one thing I think about when I think about this matchup is, I would be curious if Wink Martindale spent any time looking at, and I think he would. Like this is what coaches do. If he spent any time looking at what the Giants were able to do last year, I know they now have EJ Brown, so it's a different situation. But that first game the Giants won against the Eagles in MetLife Stadium, they did a really good job of stopping Jalen Hurts and stopping the run game.
If I remember correctly, they actually allowed the run a lot. Like I think the Eagles rushed for a lot of yards in that game, but they
Oh, I
didn't
actually think
allow
you
them
are right. I
to.
think I'm thinking of the other one.
They didn't allow them to do anything through the air. And then, like, I'm not going to say the Giants got lucky, but the Giants were fortunate because Jalen Reagor dropped like
Yeah.
3 big passes,
Including one right before the end zone.
and the Giants won the turnover battle because
Yes.
Boston Scott fumbled the football like midfield when they
Hurts threw
were
a pick in the
driving.
end zone too. That took
Aaron
3 points off
Robinson
the
got
board.
beat by Jalen Reagor, and the ball hit him right in the hands, and he
Oh,
dropped it. There was a lot of stuff like that, but
But
even
that's what they're going to have to win this game anyway. Luck.
I
Let's
think
be
so.
honest. Let's be honest. I mean, no offense to our Giants that we love. This is obviously a much better roster of the Eagles. It's not even really comparable. And it would be a little bit more of a closer battle if we had McKinney, if we had a Dory, if we had a Zuda, if we had all those guys. But with what's left, you've seen the Eagles injury report. It's almost spotless. It's crazy. They don't have any injuries. I don't understand how this team doesn't have injuries. Like, are we the only team with a laundry list injury report week after week? It's insane at this point. But it's gonna come down to luck. The Giants need to get lucky to win this game. It's obvious. I mean, I think we can say it out loud, but it's still possible. The NFL's weird. We could have some luck. But I will say this about luck: you can put yourself in a position to get lucky, and so that's what I want to discuss right now. Something you brought up. I think it's got to be different here from Mike Kafka. I don't think you can go back to the well in this game. I think you have to come out, especially because you're at home, especially because you're. Why is that important? If you're at home, you can run no huddle and tempo offense with a much better likelihood of actually succeeding in it because you're at home, because you can hear the headset, because you have Mike Kafka from the booth and it's quiet on offense and you can actually get into the checks you need. And so I really think the first possession of the game, the Giants should just come out with shotgun, with lighter personnel, moving the ball with tempo, and just running quick game offense. This is definitely the best chance they have in my mind. I just don't see a scenario where the Giants are going to be to go back to the well. Oh, here's Bellinger. Here's Myrick. Let's just run the ball out of this 13 personnel. And let's try to win some of these duo blocks up front. Let's try to run counter. Let's try to have a puller that doesn't get there. It didn't work against Washington. Why would it work against the Eagles?
One thing I look at as well is Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen were beasts against the Giants. Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Javon Hargrave, they're beasts.
Hargrave.
Whew. Yeah. And you also have Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick. And both of those players, they're not the biggest names in terms of edge rushers, and they're completely different players, but they can give some trouble to Evan Neal, who had a phenomenal game in pass protection last week. So that's another aspect we have to kind of mitigate. And one way you can is with these quick hitting type of passes. Get the football out of Daniel Jones's hand. Try and muster any sort of offense that isn't just running the football predictably. And I don't think Mike Kafka has always just run the football predictably. I think Mike Kafka is doing the best job with the hand that he is dealt. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything that Mike Kafka has done, but I think he's going to have an opening script, or at least try to have an opening script that can move the football. He generally has opening scripts that are solid. It's just execution is sometimes off. And we've seen that throughout the season, right? The Giants haven't really been the best team, the best offense with moving the football early in the game. Which game was it, Dan, where he came out and he totally deviated? It might have been Dallas, where he totally deviated from what everyone thought he was going to do, and he just threw consistently.
I'm pretty sure it was Dallas, yeah.
And they've done it before just Dallas, dude.
Right.
He's done it several different times this season. I think we might see something like that. Like actually try to get Philadelphia when you're at home on their heels to move the football successfully. And I'm hoping, like I said when we had our guest on, Sean, that they try to throw the football deep just to threaten them a little bit, to get these cornerbacks, if they are in press, off of Darius Slay. So Darius Slay has the ability to release inside, outside, off the line of scrimmage.
I think that's a great point too. And I think we know, because we've watched the tape and everyone who's listening knows, James Bradbury did not all of a sudden become a great man cover corner against speedy wide receivers. And so if they can get some matchups with Darius Slayton against Bradbury, some double moves early with vertical elements to them, run those plays, throw the ball to Slayton. Worst case scenario, you put it to the outside shoulder, it's going to be incomplete, but give him a shot, give them a shot, like you said, to play the Giants a little differently. We can't have a game plan like he was talking about, how sometimes they just go into bare fronts and just say, F it, we got 5 guys on line of scrimmage. If you try to run 13 personnel, the Giants, against these 5-man line of scrimmage, or the 12 personnel with the extra offensive lineman thing that they like to do, it's just not working. I know it's not going to work. These linebackers are playing good. TJ Edwards, who we talked about, is playing great. Dean is playing great. They're better than Washington in my mind. And against Washington, there was nothing there. All of the runs came off those draw plays, basically, all of the run yardage. So I just think you got to change it up. And I personally, I'm okay if they try to come up with the same script like you talked about with Dallas, where it was a lot of play action, throw the ball, play action, pass over and over. But I would prefer to just switch it up. You know why? Because they haven't put a lot of quick game, shotgun, spread it out, 11 personnel type looks on film, the Giants in general. It just haven't done it. It's week 14. It's crazy they haven't really done it at all yet. That's almost the most insane thing to even think about, that they haven't really run it yet. But since they haven't, it could give them a nice advantage here, because the Eagles don't have a lot of film to work with. They can look at some of what they ran in overtime, and they've done it in the past, like 2-minute drills, but this would be a good opportunity to change it up a little bit here, right? Show personnel groupings you haven't shown that are lighter personnel grouping. I just think in this matchup, we don't need Myrick and Bellinger on the field for every single snap. Bellinger, yeah, but I just think there's a different way to do it, and there's a different way to go about it, and I hope that Kafka does actually do that.
For me, at least, it doesn't need to be like every play 11
Oh, no,
personnel.
of course not.
That's not the identity, and that's not what Dan and I are saying, but just maybe a little bit more to try to get something else going. But this team, they run a lot of nickel personnel, the Eagles. They're 4th most nickel personnel team in the NFL, running about 77% of the time. But even despite that, like we saw last week, it wasn't like the Giants were able to run the football even in 13 personnel against like Washington's nickel personnel package. So like that kind of negates the personnel battle, right? Because it's not like the Giants are going to gain too much of an advantage, because Philadelphia has safeties, linebacker, hybrid guys like Kaiser White, who might not play in this game, but players of that ilk who can do a lot of different things and can wear a lot of different hats. I kind of do think Daniel Bellinger might be a big part of this passing attack, though, over the middle of the field. And not just because Sean said that, but now he's another week removed from that injury. And I think he's one of the better receiving options that the Giants have right now in terms of understanding where he is supposed to be. He is sure-handed. I think he only has one non-catch on a target. That was a drop, I think, against Dallas in week 3. Like, Daniel Bellinger has been playing really good football so far as a rookie. And you look at like Isaiah Hodgins is fine, but Richie James out of the slot, I think, can have a solid contribution this week. But I think the Giants need to also try to get Daniel Bellinger going over the middle of the field, just with those quick little OTB, those quick little spot routes in quick game.
Yeah, you sound a little bit like Charles Barkley there when you said contribution. Like contribution.
I did. It came off weird. It did. Yeah. It definitely did. Yeah, it definitely came off weird.
All right, Nick, let's get to some score predictions here. What do you got? Give us your prediction here for the Giants Eagles. We both, by the way, got last week wrong. We both predicted a win over the Washington football Commanders, and that was a tie, so we lost.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic.
But I think you said 2019, by the way. Did you? Before we get into that,
I think I said 2018.
Oh, 2019 would have been so close.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I said 2018. So I thought it was to be some kind of weird score in the game, but with this one, I'm going to go with, I think it's going to be like a 32-17 game is what and that's 2 touchdowns. I'm a little, but I do think the Giants won't come out completely lifeless. Like, I don't think the Giants are going to come out completely lifeless. I think they might keep it a game similar to what they did against Dallas, but then in the 4th quarter, the Eagles just kind of ratchet it up and the Giants fall behind. And these injuries on the defense, I mean, like guarding AJ Brown, like I like Nick McLeod a lot, but that guy's going to be matched up against AJ Brown. AJ Brown is a rare athlete. And it seems like Jalen Hurts really has a very established rapport with that receiver. I don't know who the Giants are going to match up against AJ Brown. Like, are they going to activate, or not activate, but play more Rodarius Williams because their body types are similar?
Right.
Do you
Maybe
want that? Like, is that really what we're discussing right now? And that's kind of just the state of the Giants at this moment. If you want to bring pressure, there's going to be one-on-one matchups. And we know AJ Brown is one of the best wide receivers in one-on-one matchup situations. So I think it's going to be rough sledding for New York, especially down the stretch of the game.
Yeah, this is the first game all year where I feel like going into it, I'm predicting the Giants get blown out. It sucks to to be at that stage. And again, like I said earlier, if they had better injury luck right now, I think this could be a much better game. And I think there is a chance that we could get into like mid Q2 and it's still a close game. But
Yeah.
as we roll forward, especially we've known that this Giants defense has been really bad lately in third quarters, like really bad at a halftime. I don't know what that is. And really end of half into third quarters, like just before halftime into third quarter. So I think that's when the game really turns for the Giants. Defensively, I just have no clue how the Giants are going to stop this offense. None, because of what you said, the matchups at receiver, the offensive line advantage for the Eagles. And in addition to that, in addition to all of that, Jalen Hurts' ability to run and Jalen Hurts' ability to escape, which we've seen give the Giants trouble at times.
And coverage,
Right, against man coverage. Exactly. What does a rushing quarterback want to see every snap? Man coverage. So offensively, I don't see, or defensively, I don't think this is going to work for the Giants. So that's why I kind of want them to come out early and just say, F it, let's play quick game. Let's run tempo. Let's try to put points on the board. And like you said, even take some deep shots. I think we could see, I think, so they're going to have to go to that at some point, whether Kafka likes it or not, and whether he comes out early with it, he's going to have to at some point go to the pass game like he did against Detroit. Unfortunately, he's not going to see him as much man coverage as he did against Detroit. And the personnel is just so much better for the Eagles. So I think we'll get a couple of the garbage time drives, maybe a touchdown and a field goal from garbage time, and that'll get me to 17. But I think the Eagles will probably put up like, I'm going to go with 38-17 Eagles. So
38. Okay.
Yeah. And I think there could be a defensive score for the Eagles late in the game.
I'm hoping that the Giants can, something we've seen throughout this season, and that's why I have like field goals mixed into my score, is the Giants' red zone defense ends up doing well. But looking at the Eagles' offense, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, I'm pretty sure they're one of the more efficient offenses once they get down there, especially when they're running the football because of Jalen Hurts. It's very difficult to stop their zone read game, like because Jalen Hurts is incredibly dynamic, and Miles Sanders is a good running back. It's kind of crazy that guy had no touchdowns at all last year. Now I think he has like 8 or 9. And again, don't have the numbers in front of me. And then you factor in the Boston Scott. That's a fun little like narrative, but at the same time, it just seems like every time this guy plays the Giants, he scores a touchdown. And if this is going to be a blowout game, I think Nick Sirianni and that coaching staff are tracking on it. Why put Miles Sanders back out there, risk injury when you have a guy like Boston Scott out there?
That's a great point, too. And so we'll see what happens there as well. All right. Thank you to everybody tuning into the Big Blue Banter podcast this week. That's our Eagles-Giants preview. And we'll be back Sunday night to give you a reaction to the game. We didn't get a chance to do a mailbag this week, so that'll come next week. It's long overdue. So thanks again. Talk to you soon, and have a great rest of your weekend. And go Giants. Let's figure out some lucky way to win this. Like I said, luck is still possible, so maybe they can get lucky.